So, in the previous section, we saw that how worthful is the life of an Indian worker. Just because India has a big population, and the workers here are vulnerable because they don't have work, and they would for and to work they would agree to work in any condition, whereas even if the safety standards are not up to the mark and the working conditions are not good, they'll still work. And that's the how big companies they would come to India to cut their cost and make people work for larger hours, longer duration of hours, and pay them less amount. So how what do we talk about the enforcement of safety laws? As a lawyer, as the lawmakers and enforcer, the government is supposed to ensure that the safety, it is a responsibility of the government to ensure that the safety laws are implemented. It is also the duty of the government to ensure the right to life guaranteed under Article 21. Right to life, this we've discussed it a lot of times. Guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution is not violated. What was the government doing when there was such blatant violation of safety standards in the Union Carbide plant? First, the safety laws were lax in India. Safety lax matlab they were weak. Easily somebody can avoid them. Second, even these weak safety laws were not enforced, and they were not even enforced. Even if there were laws, they were not enforced. Government officials refused to recognize the plant as hazardous and allowed it to come up in a populated locality. Of course, it was there in the Bhopal gas tragedy, where it happened. It was in the plant was in an area which had a population. When some municipal official in Bhopal objected that the installation of a MIC production unit in 1978 was a safety violation, the position of the government was that the state needs continued investment in the Bhopal plant, which provides jobs. So they said no, no, it is they want they want continued investment in the Bhopal plant, so that it provides job. One of the very debatable topic in India is unemployment. There are so many people who are educated and still they are unemployed. So it is a good way of giving people a job through all these plans and investments that come in a particular city. It is unthinkable according to them to ask our Union Carbide to shift to a cleaner technology or safer procedures. Why couldn't the government ask them to use maybe safer technology or safer methods? Government inspectors continue to approve the procedures in the plant even when the repeated incidents of leaks from the plant made it obvious to everybody that things were seriously wrong. So even if this was not, there were small indicators already that was happening in the plant, like small leakages. One worker was killed by chalo, one worker, we can say that chalo, even if some there was a leakage and something happened wrong and one person died, even though even he should not be dead, because every person's life is important. You think figures don't come, only figures matter, it's a disaster only if 100 people die, 200 people die. No, it's a disaster for the family, whose one member also died. Their life is going to take a complete u-turn. It's going to be upside and down. He was their member. So that's how it is. And even with the repeated incidents, they avoided everything. This, as you know, is contrary to what the role of lawmaking and enforcement agency should be. And that's not how lawmaking or enforcement agency should be. Instead of protecting the interest of the people, their safety was being disregarded. Safety of the people were being disregarded both by the government and by private companies. This is obviously not at all desirable. With more industries being set up both by local and foreign businesses in India, there is a greater need for stronger laws. There has to be stronger laws, which protect workers' rights and better enforcement of these laws. Why do you think the enforcement of safety laws is important in any factory? Can you point to few other situations where the laws or rules exist but people not follow them because of poor enforcement? For example, overspeeding by motorists. What are the enforcement problems? What are the poor problems? for that. Of course, if for motorists, if you say, if you increase the fine amount, okay, or if you just cancel, or you give a ticket, to that thing, maybe a stronger fine up to, I think now today the Motor Vehicle Act which is there, it fines more amount, but before it was less. I think now it is maybe 2000 or 3000, but before it was less. Maybe before it was 500, or sometimes, so it can even have, be sorted if you give 100 rupees the policeman. I'm not saying all police are bad, but I'm saying some, because some people are bad in every organization everywhere. It doesn't have to be that only police people are bad, only this thing workers are bad only, or corporates are bad. Good and people you meet everywhere in life. What are the problems of enforcement we've discussed? Can you suggest some ways in which enforcement can be improved? Yes, you increase the fine, you have better capturing, that thing, whoever violates the uh, law or speeding, for example, in devices which come, you know which capture the plate number, and directly that can be sent to the owner of the vehicle. So that's a good way. Recently, a large travel agency was asked to pay rupees 8 lakh as compensation to a group of tourists. Foreign trip was poorly managed, and they missed Disneyland and shopping in Paris. Why did the victims of Bhopal gas why did the victims of Bhopal gas tragedy then get so little for a lifetime of misery and pain? So you can see, okay, the difference. Maybe the reason is here that India does not have solid laws, or other leaders don't have the political will to come up, strong and stand strong, that no, this is not how it's gonna work. You're gonna compensate for what wrong you've done to our people. Pumps at contaminated wells are painted red by government around the Union Carbide factory in Bhopal, yet local people continue to use them as they have no other accessible source of water. So you can see here it's a hand pump. This kid is pumping, so it is colored in this portion. It's colored in red. Means that it's usually a sign, indicator to the local people that please do not drink water from this because it's contaminated due to some reason. Here, for example, it was due to the chemical. A clean environment is a public facility. Can you explain this statement? Why do we need new laws? Why are the companies and contractors able to violate environment laws? Why the companies and these contractors run away from their responsibility? How can they do it after causing so much damage and everything to the country? New laws to protect the environment. Okay, in 1984, there were very few laws protecting the environment in India, and there was hardly any enforcement of these laws. The environment was treated as a free entity. फ्री एंटिटी मतलब कि ऐसी मतलब फ्री की चीज़ जिसकी कोई कीमत ना हो. And industry could pollute the air and water without any restriction, whether it was our rivers, ground air, groundwater. The environment was being polluted, and the health of the people were being disregarded. Thus, not only Union Carbide, a beneficiary of lower safety um, standard, it didn't have to spend any money to clean up, the pollution. In USA, it is thus this is a necessary part of the production process. That you have to pay for whatever you have. This thing done damage to the environment, whereas in India it's not there. Now it is there presently, but before it wasn't there. The Bhopal treasure disaster brought the issue of environment. The issue of environment is very important because it affects us all to forefront. Several thousands of persons sorry who were not associated with the factory in any way were greatly affected because of the poisonous gases. When you know if I'm saying, why do I need a pure environment to live? Because even if there's a factory, if even I'm not connected to the factory, or I'm not a worker there and everything, still the air is circulating, and the air which has been there will come and circulate and be over my head also, and even I am going to breathe it, and maybe be my health is going to be affected by that. when the this thing gas leaks or everything. And that's what happened in Bhopal gas tragedy. This made people realize that the existing laws, though weak, only covered individual workers and not persons who might be injured. Might be injured due to industrial accidents. In response to this pressure from environmental activists and others in the years following the Bhopal gas tragedy, the Indian government introduced new laws to the environment. Henceforth, the polluter was to be held accountable for the damage that he's done. So this thing, the polluter, whoever pollutes the environment, has to be, pay for the damage that particular person has done. The environment is something that people over generations will share. It could not be destroyed merely for industrial development. It cannot be environment cannot be destroyed because it is giving benefit to you. It has to be transferred over generations. This is we are just There's a saying like we are just the caretaker of this earth, to pass it on to the next generation. That's the definition of sustainable, being sustainability. That you and me are just a caretaker of this environment, of this earth, and it is our duty to pass on to our next generation this earth in a better condition. The courts gave a number of judgments upholding the right to healthy environment as intrinsic to the fundamental right to life. In Subhas Kumar versus State of Bihar, so this was the case name. Subhas Kumar versus State of Bihar, 1991, the Supreme Court held that the right to life is a fundamental right um, under Article 21 of the Constitution, and it includes the right of right to the enjoyment of pollution-free and air for full enjoyment of life. The government is responsible for setting up laws and procedures, that can check pollution, clean rivers, and introduce heavy fines for those who pollute. Environment as a public. How do we see environment as a public facility? Now let's see that. In recent years, while the codes have come out with strong orders on environmental issues, they have sometimes affected people's livelihood adversely. For instance, the codes directed industries in residential areas in Delhi to close down or shut down to shift out of the city. Several of these industries were polluting the neighborhood and discharging discharge from these industries were going into the river Yamuna and polluting because they have been set up without following the rules. But while the court's action solved one problem, it created another. Because of the closure, many workers lost their job. Others were forced to go to far places where these factories had relocated. And the same problem now began to come up in these areas. For now, these places became polluted, and the issue of safety condition of workers remain unaddressed. So the condition, the safety condition is a very big challenge whenever there are, such big factories. Recent research on environmental issues in India has highlighted the fact that the growing concern for the environment among the middle classes, often at the expense of the poor. Like we said, it is always at the expense of somebody or the other person. I am getting something at the expense of another person. So, for example, slums need to be cleansed as part of the city's beautification drive. Often we say that it's for the beautification of the city and everything, or as in the case above, a polluting factories move to the outskirts of the city. And while this awareness of the need for a clean environment is increasing, there's a little concern for the safety of the workers themselves. Do you care for the workers who are working in these such harmful factories? The challenge is to look for solutions where everyone can benefit from a clean environment. One way this can be done is to gradually move to cleaner technology. We need to use technologies with a cleaner and processes in factories. The government has to encourage and support factories to do this. It will need to fine those who pollute. This will ensure that the workers' livelihoods are protected and both workers and the communities living around the factories enjoy a safe environment. The the issue of having a safe environment is very important. Everybody, regardless whether they are rich or poor, they should have access to pure environment. Do you think that everyone got justice in the case cited above? No, everybody didn't get. What about the workers who are working there? Even if the factories, or if they're not polluting the major, part of the city where there is pollution, sorry, where the population is located. What of the people who are working inside the factory? Have you ever thought about that? Even their lives are important. Even they have the right to fundamental right to life. Can you think of other ways in which environment can be protected? Yes, we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about cleaner technologies, and other ways are also there, and that can be dealt in detail. I think later on it will come. Emissions from vehicles are a major cause of environment pollution. In a series of rulings 1998 onwards, the Supreme Court had ordered all public transport vehicles using diesels were to switch to CNG, that is compressed natural gas. As a result of this move, air pollution in cities like Delhi came down considerably. But a recent report by the Center for Science and Environment, New Delhi, uh, shows the presence of high levels of toxic substances in the air. This is due to emissions from cars which run diesel rather than petrol, and a sharp increase in the number of cars in the road. So even if that is why you'll see a lot of buses and everything, public transport in Delhi, which are green colored. Green, that means they are running on CNG. They're running on compressed natural gas, which does not pollute the environment as such. And but still, in the recent reports, we've seen that the level of toxins have increased, because the even if that's because the new cars have more vehicles have increased, the number of vehicles have increased on road, and workers outside closed factories thrown out of work. Many of the workers end up small traders or as daily wage laborers. Some might find work in even smaller production units, while others conditions of work are even exploited, and enforcement of laws because weak is lawyer low. So, advanced countries, are relocating the toxic and hazardous industries to developing countries to take advantage of the weaker laws in these countries, keep their own countries safe. South Asian countries, particularly India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, play host for industry producing pesticide, asbestos, or processing zinc and lead. Ship breaking is another hazardous industry that is growing rapidly in South Asia. Old ships no longer in use are sent to shipyards in Bangladesh and India for scrapping. These ships contain particularly dangerous and harmful substances. The photo shows the workers breaking down a ship in Alang, which is in Gujarat. So, a lot of times, as we've seen that the laws are weak and they do not protect the rights of the workers, the safety standards are not met, and everything. That is why, which are very tight, okay, very tight and very defined and very strong and punishable in the western countries like USA. So that is why the companies and all other factories which try to escape such tight norms and rules and regulation, they come to countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, who have weak laws, so that they can avoid all that and cut the cost and get all the work done also. Conclusion, laws are necessary in many situations, whether this be the market, office, or factory, has to protect people from unfair practices. Private companies, contractors, business persons, in order to make higher profits, resort to unfair practices. That is why how they end up, using unfair practices such as paying workers low wages, employing children for work, ignoring the conditions, ignoring the damage to the environment, and so on. So, this is very important. A major role of the government, therefore, is to control the activities of the private companies by making, enforcing, and upholding laws as to prevent, unfair practices and ensure social justice. This means that the government has to make appropriate laws and also has to ensure the law, enforce the laws. Laws that are weak and poorly enforced can cause serious harm. Example: the Bhopal gas tragedies and very highlighted case. While the government has a leading role in this respect, people can exert pressure so that both the private companies and the government act in the interest of the society. If all the people come together and they are aware about the things, then the interest of the society can be met. Environment, as we saw in one example where people have pushed a public cause and the courts have upheld the right to healthy environment as intrinsic as to the right of life. In this chapter, we have argued that people now must demand, that the facility of healthy environment be extended to all. Likewise, workers' rights, right to work, right to fair wage, and right to decent work condition is in an area where the situation is still very unfair. People must demand stronger laws protecting workers' interest, so that the right to life is achieved for all. It shouldn't be that it is selective. Right to life and right to pure clean environment is only selective to people, some people, example, who are rich. But it should be available to all, whether you work in that particular factory only that is causing the damage, or whether you are working outside, or you are just a citizen. It should be for all. Yeah. So, because it is for the interest, fine, because in the end, it is for the interest of the society, Talk to two workers, whether it's construction farmers, workers, and find out what are they receiving minimum wages in your area. Do you think what are the advantages of foreign company setting? We've already discussed that, our laws are weak laws, and cheap labor in the sense keep people can work even for longer hours, in short for short amount. Do you think that the victims of Bhopal gas shortage are discussed? No, the chairman of Union Carbide just died 2 3 years because of some illness, or maybe, I think, as far as I know, maybe heart attack or something. But that was uh, I think he died of illness, and also due to age factor. As far as I remember, he died around the age of 92 or so. So that's also an age factor. That's not that he was punished or something. The people are still the children who are born to people who actually suffered that gas incident are born abnormal with strange peculiar abnormality, as you saw the picture of the girl. How are you saying that they're going to lead a normal life? Their life has been totally upside down. Okay. So, wow, what do we mean when we speak of law enforcement? Matlab, who are the people who are going to take care that people are, who is going to inspect? Whether, chalo, we say that we've made a law to take care about, the working conditions, but who's going to check that whether it is going to actually is being enforced or not? So there has to be a different department, who takes care about, who's responsible for enforcement. What is the enforcement? Like, we have the labor ministry also is there. So Ministry of Labor or Ministry of Social Justice is also there, but they have different role. But labor ministry would be more, I think, here applicable. How can laws ensure that markets work in a manner that is fair? Give two examples. For example, financial markets, it is SEBI. SEBI is a board, or it's an authority, which looks about that financial regulations are met by different companies and etc. So there are different yeah, authorities which look after that. Imagine yourself to be a worker working in a chemical factory which has received orders from the government to move from different site 100 kilometers from the present location. Write about how your life would change. Read. If, of course, it is like that only. If your the main point from going from there to all the other places of nearby will change, your life will go upside down. Maybe I will think of shifting to that place only where the factory is nearby that or area. So whole my this thing, my main public transport will change and everything, and that will give me an pressure, because if I have my kids, their schoolings and everything will also be will also get affected, due to because of me. Write a paragraph on various roles of the government that you've read about. So you can write with law enforcement, making implementing laws and everything. What are the sources of environment pollution in your area? Discuss with respect to air, water, and soil. So how is the, you know who's causing these air pollution in your area? For like water, maybe the factories which are working in a nearby factories, they're discharging the chemicals or untreated waste. Sometimes air pollution, the factories, maybe the factories which yeah, eject gases which are all somewhat poisonous, or they cause pollution in the air pollution. They create smog and everything. Soil, maybe a factory again, who's discharged water that might go into soil. Or maybe this thing, what do we say, mining and everything, they are doing blasting and everything, that also creates pollution in the soil and everything. So how was environment treated earlier, how has been change in perception discussed? So firstly, we're talking about that, we've already discussed that firstly environment was considered as a free entity, that here it is, that this is very important, that it's a free entity, and in anybody, any whether you talk about any industry, any organization can pollute without any restriction, whether it is a rivers and everything. But after the Bhopal gas tragedy, everything, the issue of environment actually started becoming very serious, and people started taking engaging in it. What do you think of the famous cartoonist RK Lakshman is trying to convey in this cartoon? How does it relate to the 2006 law that you've read on page 123? Uh, it's here. It's really cruel burdening kids like this. I had to hire that boy to help my son. So he's saying that this is such a funny, okay? So he's also a boy, and this boy, this mother is saying that his bag is so heavy that I have to hire a boy to carry this thing, his kids back. But how fair it is for this little boy, who also is maybe of the same age, or little elder to this boy, who doesn't have the opportunity to go school. What about his future? Chalo, future, what about, forget about the future, what about his rights as being a child? So that's very contradictory, he's saying something for his kid, but she is actually contradicting when it's coming to somebody else's kid. So you can read more about Bhopal gas strategy and on the ongoing struggle, that whether does it have did the victims of, or the survivors, more better term, survivors, did they get justice now or not? Because lot of people, organizations, they have come together to protest, especially on the day 2nd December, there's protest and everything, awareness and everything. Do you think that they have, according to, they've still got this thing, uh, um, justice? Was it a fair trial and everything? Glossary, let's see about the words. Who's a consumer? An individual who buys goods for personal use and not for resale. He buys goods for himself or herself. Producer, person, organization that produces goods for sale in the market. At times, the producer keeps a part of the produce for his own house, like a farmer, and then maybe he sells the remaining. Investment money spent to purchase new machinery or building. The how much you invest in building your house or a building, or training so as to able to increase modernized production in the future. That's how about when you build something, or machinery or training or anything, that so that your increase, or there's increase in your profit and everything. Workers union, what is workers union? Union is like coming together. So here for workers, it means association of workers. Workers unions are common in factories and offices, but might also be found in other types of workers. Say domestic workers union, leaders of the union bargain and which negotiates with the employer on behalf of its members, or the issue which includes wages, work rules, or governing hiring, firing, promotion, and all these rules, safety standards, and everything. They speak for the people. It's a group which the people who come, they come together and speak for everybody else. So we've completed this chapter, and also we've done this unit with it. We'll start with class 9 book in our next class. And take care of yourselves, eat healthy, sleep on time, stay positive in life, also enjoy life. Take care. Bye.